cracker, but I ain't from Alabama. I'm a Florida boy, Southern, got a Florida Gator cousin. I'm a sitter on this lean, fucking cold with my team. Ain't no laws and dragon claws. I'm a slide in my Supreme. Fuck the feds, fuck the law. Going fishing in a trawl. Fuck the feds, fuck the law. Going hunting in the dog. Fuck the feds, fuck the law. Skinny dipping in the park. Fuck the feds, fuck the law. Sawed off shotgun in my car. Check it, check it.
What up, Vigilantes? I'm here with Jack Lloyd
What's up?
of the Voluntarius comic series. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. We're having a good time out here.
So, I mean, Voluntarius comic series. Can you explain to people what you do?
Oh, absolutely. So I'm the producer, writer, and letterer for Voluntarius, the comic series. It's this kind of cutting-edge, liberty-oriented comic that really turns the whole comicdom on its face and over, because everything in comics and in mainstream Hollywood is all just pro-government, pro-state. You know, the CIA is the savior, FBI is the savior. So my comic book series does not take that angle at all. It's totally against the state. It's not preachy. It's not, you know, oh, here's some political treatise thing, but it's a comic book series that really questions the nature of what it means to be truly free and gets people to think about the nature of government and what it actually does. So.
Do you tackle the issue of big tech?
I would say to a tangential degree, there's lots of references to different types of, you could say, government, corporate orchestrations, clandestine operations, that kind of thing. You get the whole gamut in there. So
what motivated you to get started with this?
Sure. So like about 12 years ago now, actually, I started to do some cosplay stuff where I dressed up these voluntarious superheroes, and we did some like street activism, holding up signs like, it'd be great to have this like for a movie or something like that, like a superhero movie. So I started to script that, and I realized it's just too much money. It's it'd be really expensive to do right. So I said, I could do a comic book series, and so I ran with that. I started to develop it. I did Indiegogo fundraisers for it about 10 years ago, and we just had our 10th anniversary campaign, over 100% funded, fully successful with the latest issue. So it's been really great.
Do you ever see this turning into an actual film?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, since the original was a film, concept, that's the goal. The sky's the limit, and especially on the heels of Eric July's success with Rippaverse, which has been doing amazingly on his website. He's raised over $3 million. I definitely I'm heading in that direction, working toward that, bigger production level stuff. So we're ratcheting it up each time, and it's been going great.
So a lot of people that are like more right-wing leaning, go to school for engineering, business, not a lot of people emphasize the arts. The left, people that are more of the leftist persuasion tend to go to art school, music school. Why is that?
I think it's just a focus on how one processes things, and I think if you're a little bit more literal, linear, logical, that kind of thing, more, in your face, like work with your hands kind of thing, you may be a little bit less on the creative side, whereas a lot of people you could say on the left or progressives, they often tend to be more emotionally driven. They tend to, you could say, think with their heart kind of thing. And so you get a little bit more bias that way, where people who gravitate toward that way of thinking tend to be a little more artsy, but it's not limited to them. I think we've seen a huge number of projects come out and are flourishing. We have the Tuttle twins out there doing great, and that's a kid's book that's doing awesome. Of course, you have Eric July's Rippaverse, you have the Voluntarius, you have Seamus of Freedom Tunes, and you have so many different projects that are out there coming up in the liberty world. So creativity is not limited to the statist leftists, that's for sure.
So does the Voluntarius, does this superhero, does he dabble with cryptocurrency?
It's funny, the character was actually drawn in a Cointelegraph article in 2014. They did this little Flash versus the Voluntarius thing, and he's holding a Bitcoin symbol. So you could say that crypto does actually have something to do with the series, and it's not only mentioned, but it's referenced in various ways in the issue and in some future verse prototypes even. Yeah.
So at the Dollar Vigilante, the Crypto Vigilante, we have a superhero of our own. His name is Ed Bugos.
Okay.
We call him the Golden Lantern.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe, he can
Lantern.
make a debut on the Voluntarius comic book someday.
You never know.
The
kind
Golden Lantern.
The
He's
Golden
a badass Austrian economist, man.
That
talks about gold and crypto.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so his power is to convince people the power of gold and crypto?
and he's got iron. He's got gold fists, man.
Okay, I like
He can
that.
throw down as well.
Solid.
Yeah, he's solid. The
Okay.
Golden Lantern. Ed
Golden
Bugos.
Lantern, I like it.
Yeah, I don't know if maybe I just doxed him in his
Yeah.
superhero
Right, you got the
persona, but
alternate-
it doesn't matter because, it's important for people to know who the identity of the Golden Lantern is.
Right, if he's just there trying to wake people up, and that's his whole being, there's nothing to hide there. He's just trying to wake people up. So
For sure.
Yeah.
So you're an entrepreneur, and you've
Yeah.
been in the liberty space for a while.
Oh yeah.
So what do you see now as you look at this Young Americans for Liberty conference?
Mm-hmm.
All the young people in the post-pandemic era.
Yeah.
What are you vibing from them? What's going on?
Yeah.
What's on their mind?
So from what I've seen, the shutdowns, which were not due to a virus, they were due to the governments around the world shutting things down, really inspired people and pushed them to their edge there, and where they had to say, okay, enough is enough. And I think that has caused so many people, despite the inflation, despite the cronyism, despite the shutdowns, despite the lockdowns, to say, I'm going to do something with my life. And I've never seen more people getting together and just being so excited, so exuberant to be hanging out, sharing ideas, talking about liberty, thinking about how they can put into action. I mean, you really don't get too many places where you have this many people together who are on fire. It's, this is one of the places where you can see that in action and meet people from all different ages, backgrounds, countries, and really share that passion of liberty and really encourage each other. So I think it's wonderful, and I think we need more of it. We need more events, more opportunities for people to connect and to build for the future.
Do you see the liberty movement growing?
Oh, it's been growing. I mean, I've been here doing this stuff for over 15 years plus in the liberty movement, and I've watched it be something that is totally ignored. You wouldn't ever see it in a TV show. You would never see it in the mainstream. And now all of a sudden, at this juncture, there's just so many people on fire for liberty because of everything that's gone on with the shutdowns, lockdowns, the government intervention. And we just need more of this. We need more young people and people, of all ages and backgrounds coming together, networking, building together, and working toward a freer future.
So what does the Voluntarius do about mass surveillance?
In the comic series?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so the character, in terms of the plot line, is that his identity, is just a regular person, regular college student graduate, until he was affected by a cosmic event that changes his life. And he didn't really necessarily have any, crazily, big anti-government views off the bat. It was kind of just a background thing. But when the government comes to go and try to recruit him, and then he doesn't want to be a part of it, and then they kidnap his parents, that really radicalizes him, and it causes him to investigate. And I think that's true of many people. Many people will go about their lives, and for them, government's just a thing in the background. They don't think about it too much. But until something really affects them, that's when it turns them on for liberty. It really gives them that fire. And I think for many, the lockdown, shutdowns, and in many cases the censorship, the tech, police state kind of thing coming together, that's really gotten people to wake up.
I met a young man here yesterday that told me that he was born in 2000, so he does not know what a pre-9/11 world U.S. looks like.
Right.
And that's freaky because
is.
now you see CCTV cameras everywhere.
Yep.
And we're moving into a dystopian world of mass surveillance,
Right.
of tracking and tracing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's almost like a lot of the youth now is being born into a boiling pot, and this is their normal.
Oh, yeah. Oh, it's evil. And in schools, too. I deal with this, so I have a page called The Honest Teacher where I help families get out of the state schooling system and encourage them to unschool their kids, which means it's self-directed learning, it's child-oriented learning. And a lot of the horror stories I hear is just these kids are going into schools, they're going through metal detectors, or they're having their stuff searched. There's cameras everywhere. They can't get to go to the bathroom without asking permission. There's limits on that. It's just so draconian and so Orwellian. And many of these kids are then being medicated because they can't conform to this police state style school environment, especially where they're being tested all the time and everything's just preparing them for the tests. It's horrible. I mean, these kids are being drugged and they're being abused. And it's really important to get them out of those environments because they will end up being broken, they will end up being hurt, and it will affect them for the rest of their lives.
So how can you, what would you say is the best means of oriented the activist energy in waking these people up who only know tyranny as their normal?
For me, what I like to do, and anybody can do this, is just to look into unschooling the concept. There's a lot of great books out there, one by Carrie McDonald called Unschooled, Raising Curious Kids Outside the Conventional Classroom. And that kind of information, when people see that this is a real thing and they know this is not just a theory, like there's centers like the Sudbury Valley School in Framingham, Massachusetts that are implementing this, where kids are free to learn and adults act as facilitators instead of judges and threatening them that, oh, you better turn this in or we're going to put you in detention. It's real. This is a real thing happening, and there's all different types of decentralized means, whether it's co-ops, whether it's self-directed learning centers, whether it's Sudbury-style schools or homeschooling that's unschooling style. It's all out there. You just got to see it, and when you see it, it's hard to turn away because it's so beautiful, and you suddenly reconnect with your childhood, and you remember how learning how to walk, learning how to talk, these things came naturally, and trying to force it with a one-size-fits-all policy for all kids does nothing but shame them and label them and stigmatize them and make them feel horrible, and then leave only the most obedient and the most able to conform rising to the top at the top of the class, while everybody else is left just to rot and to have their creativity shut down and their interests shut down. It's really tragic.
What's the name of the place in Massachusetts you just mentioned?
Framingham, Massachusetts. That's where the Sudbury Valley School is, one of the most preeminent unschooling self-directed learning centers in America. Been open for well over 60 plus years, yeah.
Right on.
Yeah.
Right on. And the link is right here in the QR code, so you guys can go to it. So, so you've been in the liberty movements for some time.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel hopeful for the future?
Oh, absolutely.
How? Why?
Yeah. So for me, what I always try to point people to is that whenever the government does horrific things, it doesn't come without consequences, right? When the government shuts down, when the government locks down, when the government lies and becomes bigger and greater, eventually there's a turning point and people start to say enough is enough. And when they play their cards too quickly and they start to do too many things at once, then really you get a lot of people starting to resist instead of just the slow burn method. And I think that now more than ever, people have woken up to the police state and to this great reset that's going on that Schwab's trying to put out with the World Economic Forum. People are starting to recognize that the government is trying to shut down healthy foods, organic foods, and natural foods, and instead replace it with a bunch of bugs and tell you don't have to own anything and that you're just going to basically live in a pod. I think people are seeing this as a scary reality that they want to resist and they want to say no to. And that's what I try to do, is just recognize or get people to recognize that all you have to do is turn to your neighbor and talk to those in your community, and you're going to find that you have a lot more people who think like you in terms of not wanting this tyranny and just wanting to be free than you realize. The government manipulates people in the mainstream media to get people to think that everything's just doom, gloom, and fear because they want you traumatized, they want you controlled, they want you poor, and they want you obedient. But when you start to turn to others, you realize you can actually step out of that paradigm. You can kill your television. You can start talking to your neighbors. You can start sharing about unschooling. You can start talking about peaceful parenting. You can start talking about agorism and people doing trade outside the state. You can start living a freer life today. And even crypto is a part of that paradigm. So,
what's the biggest challenge to everything you just said?
In terms of like a counter argument about the growing government?
No,
or
yeah.
Just
what's the biggest challenge to waking people up?
Oh, well, the biggest challenge is just that the government has a very big brainwashing program. You might have heard it. It's called compulsory state or public school. And that does a number on people's minds because they're spending 15,000 plus hours, 12, 13 years being forced to obey or be shamed and threatened in school. And they're having the pledge done to them each day. And this is a brainwashing process to get them to be subservient to those in political and economic power. And so often I'm having to fight past that trauma-induced brainwashing. I'm having to really push against that and just to get people to find some fact that takes them out of that reality. Once they can find something that they can latch onto and say, hey, wait a second, that's a real thing that the government's done that's bad. If I can get them to see at least one thing and they can question the rest of everything else, I've done my job. So that's what I try to look for. I try to look for that one thing that someone is shocked by to hear, and they can go and confirm it for themselves and say, oh, the government actually did this evil thing, whether it's like the eugenics movement and sterilizing 70,000 Americans or doing COINTELPRO and secretly going in and manipulating political organizations, whatever it is.
Oh,
right?
now people are curious.
Right, and now
so
people are curious.
Explain that real quick. COINTELPRO. Well, tell them what that is.
Like COINTELPRO is going to be your FBI infiltration, and CIA too, their own comparative kind of deception, going into different political organizations and putting in informants and patsies, mailing out blackmail letters, threatening activists, that kind of thing, that they actually, put people in there or work with informants to disrupt the traction of movements. And that happens in the liberty movement too. There's always been some type of FBI presence in various networks and various organizations. So just being aware of that and looking for people who are clearly trying to take away from the message of liberty and try to, push people to like some immediate short-term violent end, that's what you want to look out for with those people.
For sure. We can play Spot the Fed later if you want.
Right. I mean, they usually make it pretty easy because usually it's a group of them. They're all a little too buff for the environment. They have like the same wristband or the same colored sock, right? Because they have to all know who's on the end. But, we know what you're doing out there, FBI. So,
I actually like them because, you know what? In a sense, they're learning. And so I like that they're around because they get to learn themselves.
That's true.
To me, it's very valuable. So, for example, cryptocurrencies for me are not ideologically driven. Mm-hmm. They are profit driven, and they're driven for value. We seek value, and this is a value for everyone. Capitalism is for everyone, right? Like everyone has a smartphone.
Right.
Independent of your ideology, religious background,
right.
We all have a smartphone. So we have these new cool digital assets that can help everyone out in their personal life. So the more the merrier, that's what I say.
Right. I mean, it's definitely a means for people to be able to trade outside of state control, using certain things. And for some, that is way better than their native, home country fiat currencies. So there's plenty of currencies that are nowhere near as stable as some of these cryptos. When you think about these horrible dictatorships where they're manipulating things all the time, for some people, crypto is kind of a godsend for them. It's something that's going to save them from economic hardship.
What do you see as the biggest challenge for crypto from your perspective being in the liberty movement? Because there is a lot of individuals coming into crypto that are using crypto for tyrannical reasons, really.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I mean, once there was success on Bitcoin, that was immediately sought out to be co-opted by governments around the world. The Chinese government got in on that with their, mining mills and things like that. So we are facing, of course, outside influence, outside manipulation. I think that where you see the most value is going to be in those which really have great encryption. I think of Monero because the IRS still has, a bounty for cracking it. So that's kind of my little, win test there of something that's maybe a little bit more secure. But I think that Bitcoin is just the start. It's the seed of the idea of what you could do thinking outside the state and thinking outside of central planning. And I think that we're only going to see greater and better things coming up. And the governments of the world are going to try to stop it, of course, as they often do, or try to profit off of it. But I think that if people continue to think of new ways to work outside the system and new adaptations, we can out-evolve the state.
Hey, have you heard of Dero? D-E-R-O, it's the privacy Ethereum. So what Monero is to Bitcoin, Dero is to Ethereum. Have you heard of Dero?
I've only heard the name. I'm not familiar with the technology in terms of the specifics.
Right on. So you're hopeful in the future of crypto. You're hopeful in the future of the liberty movement. What do you expect for this great reset to be like? How is it going to show its face? Because one thing is that, yes, they're telling us what they're going to do, but what do you expect for us to go through? Like, if you were to give your best shot at given my experience in the liberty movement and my understanding of the world as is, what the fuck is about to happen?
Yeah. I think it's pretty clear because at this point they've pretty much publicly announced it because they're just wanting to get all their little cronies on board and just let them know what's going on, because they don't exactly have like an email listserv to let everybody know who really wants this, exactly what's going on. So they kind of announce it at these forums. But they want everybody to lose private property, so they don't want anybody owning their home outright. They don't want even people owning cars or even physical possessions. They want people to basically just be dependent on some type of leasing system. They want everyone to be forced to have to borrow and get permission. And I think you see kind of a precursor to this in China with the social credit system. They want people to be unified in a type of demarcation that shows how obedient they are to the government. And I think that all those elements of private property are going to be tied to that, and how obedient you are will give you access to those things. And I think some of the other ways that they're moving forward on that too is with the the food and trying to get people dependent on really just not as attractive and kind of gross alternatives, from the soy food to the the crickets, the bugs, right? They're trying to get people to actually eat bug stew. There's flavoring that's used with bugs, but it's a little bit different to have everything you're eating to be, cockroaches or crickets there. So they want people to get on a much less sufficient diet, so they're continuing to be dumbed down, they're continuing to be more dependent, and basically just on supplements and on pharmaceuticals to make them feel better. So the more they get people moved away from private property, the more they get them dependent on the government and on them for every little thing to the point they can't function. That's their ultimate goal. And then eventually, they want to get everybody into a crammed space in cities with having virtually no space, like, really under a total police state where everything's closely monitored. And then after that, we're talking their end game, which is depopulation, because these are all Malthusian eugenicists who are following the plans from the early 20th century, that have been thought up and dreamed up, and some of them were just smashed recently, right, with the Georgia Guidestones, but they want humanity to get a makeover in their liking, which is where they're in control. That is the people who are part of this forum and the central bank elite who are with them. They want everybody else to be subjugated to them completely, to completely controlled and unable to mount any meaningful resistance, and to get rid of anybody they consider as a useless eater. They don't want anybody that is not useful to their ends, and that's the real scary part.
How do we stop this?
I think the main part is just waking everybody up, because to me, if they actually could move on this meaningfully right away, they would have. Because they try to do it with the shutdowns, like with Fauci, and the NIH supporting EcoHealth Labs to do the gain of function research in Wuhan. It was very clear they were trying to do this. They were trying to create that reason to have the true kind of New World Order be established. But it didn't go as hoped, because people were able to get past their controls on social media, go to alternatives, build alternatives, and share information and wake everybody up out of that mass psychosis. So to me, it's clear they don't have a lock. If they did, they would just go for it and be like, all right, everybody's getting shut down. We're just controlling you, right? They know people have enough knowledge, resources, and arms to resist enough. So we still have time, and the key now is to wake up as many people as possible, because the more people you have to say no and to transact outside of what they're doing, the easier it is to resist it. Because, again, they only win by dependency. So if you're dependent on them and their built-in system from schooling to food to news and information, then they can control you. But if you are starting to opt out little bit by bit in your life to alternatives, thinking outside the state, which I really like people to think about, just think outside the state, well, now you're resilient. It doesn't matter what they do. Okay, they can mess with the dollars, they can do inflation, but hey, you still have other means to trade, you still have other resources to deal with others in a non-fiat way. So being resilient, again, not that you have to do everything for yourself. I'm not saying, go be a farmer, do everything. No, that's crazy still, because you need specialization. But start to think about ways to network with people. Know people who are into farming. Know people who are mechanics. Know people who you can do business with otherwise outside the state, that kind of thing.
For anyone that's new to everything you just spoke about,
yeah,
and they might be thinking like, man, this is a mouthful. Like, where do I start?
Yeah.
What's going on? I just found myself on this YouTube video hearing these two guys talk about all this, what Malthusian mouthful, whatever this craziness that he's talking about. What would he tell them?
I would say a good start, if you want to get the principles down, the stuff that you need to do for yourself to really develop the right mindset that's long-term oriented, that gets you the kind of a socio-economic wellness that you need to get to that level. Get my book, The Definitive Guide to Libertarian Voluntarism. It's on Amazon. It's a short read, 99, 100 pages. It's got those bare bones principles there that you need to start thinking in this way, where you think outside the state, you think about what it means to have an ethical life and what it means to have non-initiation of force against others, which means you respect the consent of others, you respect their bodies, you respect their property. And that is the key, because the government wants people to always fight each other, right? Everything they do is about division. They want people fighting each other. They want people thinking, how can I steal from my neighbor, right? How can I get the benefits from the next bill? And that's self-destruction, right? Everybody fighting each other for who gets stolen from the most. That's suicide for everybody. We don't want that. We want to think about how we can protect each other by respecting each other and building up wealth together, right? There's a lot of really bad people out there who are trying to make us poor and enslaved, but by and large, it's probably not the people who are your neighbors. It's probably not the people in your community. It's probably not most of your friends or family, right? So those are people to reach. Those are people to help recognize, hey, there's a better way to do life and to think of things that you can do to live outside this crony, corrupt system that is just built to be in debt, right? $30 trillion in debt in the U.S., perpetual wars in the Middle East, people being stolen from and having their stuff taken because the government said, oh, you have a plant in your car, or, oh, you have too much cash in your car, we're going to steal it all. I mean, it's a bizarre world, right? These kindergarten level principles are lost by adulthood because of all the brainwashing in school and getting them to think that, oh, well, if you vote, then you can steal. If you vote, you can murder, right, through war. And that's what we're trying to change that paradigm on, is that ethics or morality, whichever bet you want to come at it from, they're consistent. And we want that consistency for everybody.
Jack Lloyd, ladies and gentlemen, and the name of the book is?
The Definitive Guide to Libertarian Voluntarism. It is definitely worth your read and worth your time. So.
And what's the name of the comic book?
Voluntarius, the comic series. So voluntary, the word, and an ist, I-S-T, voluntaryist.
Jack, thank you for being with us.
Oh,
thank
my
you for
pleasure.
hanging out. Anything else you want to say?
Hey, and check out Florida Boy. My latest song just dropped.
Woo!
It is a banger, and you're going to love it. I mean, especially right now, everybody's in Florida, so you're all Florida boys up in this place, right? And you're Florida Boy in spirit, too. So check out Florida Boy, YouTube, SoundCloud. It's going to be the next big thing.
Peace, love, anarchy.
Peace.